This is a story about a sensibility that found expression in the wonder and ideals of Einstein and Niels Bohr all through the course of their lives. The sensibility of these two men does not require genius. It is a quality that is available to any one of us in our daily lives. And now, once upon a time. On walking. For Einstein and Niels Bohr, walking was not only a dear pleasure, it was an indispensable part of their thought processes. When Werner Heisenberg first came to work with Niels Bohr in Copenhagen, Bohr greeted his young colleague with, "Let's go for a walk." They walked for 3 days, talking physics and making up games along the way. Going for a walk with Niels Bohr was an experience for many people, young and old, that found inspiration for the rest of their lives. As for Einstein, his love for walking was well known, and someone asked him, how come walking so important for him? Einstein replied, well, if it wasn't for walking, there never would have been an Einstein. On another occasion, a reporter asked him if he carries a pad and pencil with him in case he gets an idea while he's out on a walk. Einstein smiled and said, in my business, I get maybe one idea a year. Believe me, I won't forget it. Always drawn to what is elemental, Einstein and Niels Bohr were educated and inspired by the imagination and inventiveness of children. At the Institute for Advanced Study, there was a nursery school for the children of permanent and visiting faculty. Einstein would stop by and visit with the children and occasionally take part in their play. One day, a fairly well-known physicist stopped by to visit at the Institute. He walked into the dining room, spotted Einstein, sat next to him, and he said, who's doing the most important work at the Institute? Einstein looked at him and said, if truth be known, the most advanced work at the Institute is going on down at the nursery school. The visitor winced, got up and left the room. Einstein turned to a colleague and said, isn't it remarkable how someone can know so much and yet understand so little? Niels Bohr spent a lot of time with children. He was especially pleased to have his grandchildren at the family summer home in Tisveld. He took them on walks through the forest where, as everyone knows, the trolls dwelt. And putting the little ones on the handlebars of his bicycle, he often would ride them to the beach. A photographer caught him going through all the motions of delighted tasting to convince an unconvinced granddaughter that the cereal was the most delectable of foods. And then, turning philosophical as he was prone to do, he said, in their joyful eagerness, one witnesses the potentialities of human life at its very finest. Children have expectations of everything. For Bohr and Einstein, it was a matter of simple observation. In a child, we see the wonder and awe within us all. On education, as profound as was their work in physics, their thoughts and practice in education were of the same nature. Einstein wrote a paper in 1952. It was titled Education for Independent Thought, and he wrote, overemphasis on the competitive system and premature specialization on the grounds of immediate usefulness kills the spirit on which all cultural life depends, specialized knowledge included. He later on would say, "The purpose of education is to nurture thoughtfulness. The lesser function of thinking is to solve puzzles and problems. The essential purpose of education is to discover for yourself what is of genuine value in life, and then to find the courage to take your own thoughts seriously." Niels Bohr had 6 sons, 8 grandsons, and 9 granddaughters, and all were gifted by Bohr's dramatic readings of the old fairy tales that he had been read to as a youngster. The children had their favorites, and every once in a while one would shout out, "Oh, Grandpa, please do it again, please, please." And Bohr would shake his head and do it again, just as if he was reading it for the very first time ever. It was hands-on experience at the Bohrs, where the youngsters helped out in the kitchen and in the garden, and a variety of other projects, including parties and other gatherings. Niels Bohr was fond of saying that imitation is a prime method of learning, and combined with a child's curiosity and energy, there were many opportunities for a child to be happily engaged while gaining a sense of their own abilities. The children especially loved to be outdoors, and Bohr would often join in their play. When caught in the middle of a romp, he said, "I love playing with children." The Bohrs, Niels and Marguerite, were models of kindness, and with a house full of children, there were occasions when being fair was part of the conversation around the dinner table. For Niels Bohr, being fair was more than a moral issue, for in being fair, one witnesses people and events in a clearer light. Being fair is at the root of wisdom. It all begins with being fair. Bohr's openness to experience was passed on to his children. Agi, one of Bohr's sons, who also won a Nobel Prize, talked about his father's ways. He said, "Our father was very good at teaching us how to make mistakes." On peace and justice. While they struggled with the deep hidden secrets of physics, throughout their lives they spoke out, wrote, and took actions on crucial issues of the time. And from Einstein and Bohr we hear, "It is not the role of ideals to be realized. It is enough if fine but unattainable ideals influence our morals. It is a task never finished, something always present to guide our judgment and to inspire our conduct." On trust. The quality that shaped the lives of Einstein and Bohr was a feeling of trust. The particulars of that trust took many forms, but the thread throughout created 2 lives filled with awe and gratitude. It is not coincidental that parents and teachers share the same job, to foster trust. When that quality is well seated, all manner of wonder and affection abound. On beauty and commonality. We can only speculate about what Einstein and Bohr would share with us if they were around today. It is likely, given their sense of wonder, that they would remind us that time was invented so we could change our minds. It is an evolutionary gift. Guiding their thought and work, 2 considerations were paramount. The first was beauty. Einstein said, Beauty is the first test. Whatever the inquiry, the solution was to be found in discovering the beautiful. The beauty in the structure of the stars or a single atom is also true of human experience. For that which sustains life is beautiful. Kindness and empathy, curiosity and courage, a grand sense of play, and a profound regard and love for the natural world. The sages of all times have been sharing that lesson. In our own time, naturalist Terry Tempest Williams writes, "Beauty is not optional. It is essential to our survival as a human species." The second consideration is that Einstein and Bohr were always on the lookout for unifying principles. Their passion was to discover the sameness in that which appears to be different. All the rest are merely details. In the human species, the details are race and religion, gender and nationality, all interesting details. Nevertheless, they are all details. The root, the great commonality, is that we are all mothers and fathers, whether we've had children or not. It's built in. Nothing in the human experience is as powerful as the love that parents feel for their children. Whatever its frailties, that relationship remains our clearest expression of love and support. And if that is the bedrock of human life, then parents all over the world, in every corner of the world, have more in common with each other than they do with certain policies of their own governments. Therein lies the common ground from which we can move on. In the early years of the 20th century, Einstein and Bohr gave us a new story about the nature of the universe. And now, in the early years of the 21st century, they can give us a new and bold story for the years ahead. These two men were reared on fairy tales, so they learned at an early age to believe impossible things. For Einstein and Bohr, fairy tales are the embodiment of our highest ideals, our sense for the possible. Fairy tales are the seeds for a state of mind. And so, if Einstein and Bohr were around today, they would give us a fairy tale for people of all ages. An Einstein-Bohr fairy tale is one in which everyone is rooting for everyone. Imagine that. Everyone rooting for everyone.